Hi, my name's Phil. I'd like to talk about politics, and in this video, I'd like to discuss how people in America are starting to reflect on the fact that Trump's behaviour is not just shattering the alliances which have helped America pursue its own security policies in the past, but is actively destroying their defence industry. But there's something else which I'm not seeing these American commentators talking about yet. Maybe it's too disturbing for them to contemplate right now. But first, for daily political commentary, please hit the subscribe button to stay notified. So for those of us paying attention, and particularly outside America where nationalism is much less likely to cloud our thinking, it seems fairly unremarkable now to consider the damage Trump is doing to the nuts and bolts of America. Partly because we've seen it before, partly because we have bigger concerns right now. But everything that Trump is doing, which he claims is to help some part of the American economy, actually does the opposite. And you can understand how Americans are starting to talk about this now. Many Americans will be concerned with the way Trump is destabilizing the situation globally. But also they have to be concerned about their own domestic situation as well. So, for example, tariffs, they will not help boost American manufacture. It will kill it off. This is because manufacturing relies upon frictionless trade across a vast network of supply chains in order for it to be efficient enough to keep costs down. 25% tariffs on components every time they pass the US border with Mexico or Canada, which they do a lot, is ruinous for American factories. Ed Conway, economic correspondent for Sky, was describing a component that goes across the border with Canada and Mexico 6 times before completion. And tariffs being added every single time. Trump's tariffs have also hit American farming because both Canada and China responded with retaliatory tariffs, which hit politically sensitive industries in America, like agriculture. But I've now seen American commentators talking about defense. The focused view on Trump's strategy with Ukraine could be to withdraw American military support. I mean, it's sort of done that now, but it's like that's supposed to be a sort of twisting an arm thing. But they could do so permanently, but still expect European countries to stump up the money to get it flowing again. In other words, there's a possibility. This was actually my working assumption, about a week or so ago, but I'm not so sure. But there is a possibility that Trump still wants American arms being exported to Europe, but for the US itself to cut back on its own spending on them. So in other words, yeah, we still want the weapons to go there, but some other bugger can pay for them. Now, we've got other ideas in Europe. There are plans in progress to unlock hundreds of billions of euros in funding to develop the European arms industry. This is a plan which could take some years. Macron has suggested up to 10 years, which will mean Europe supplies itself. That on its own would be quite bad for the US defence industry. It'd be losing customers. But there's another factor being realised now. With Trump turning off or threatening to turn off the tech needed to mount a defence, why would we buy American weapons or equipment or tech in general? Why would anyone use Starlink if there are threats to turn it off for political reasons, regardless of what your contract says? It's not just Ukraine. They're threatening Ukraine, but the rest of Europe could go, well, you're actually making political enemies of us as well. Why would we use Starlink? Military weapons, these days, they're a little bit like computer games. There was a time when you bought a computer game, like you physically bought it, came on a disc or even a cassette, because that's how old I am. It was then yours. You know, these days you buy a game and what you're really doing is buying access to the game server. If the server's shut down, you no longer have the game. It's like this with arms as well. We buy equipment from America, but America, the software needed to run it can be basically disabled unilaterally. Trump has threatened to do so with Ukraine. So, of course, the threat exists for the rest of Europe as well. For example, F-35s. American commentators are now starting to talk about the fact we will just have to stop buying American arms because we don't have control over them. That America could switch them off mid-battle, literally mid-battle. That's a huge security risk. So in 10 years' time, if things carry on as they are, Europe will be producing its own full range of defence equipment and only buying from its own procurement supply chains and be completely self-reliant. The thinking in one American piece I was reading is that this would be a terrible blow to the American defence industry. it would be losing as customers its closest allies and one of the richest groups of countries in the world. That in turn would make it harder for America to tool up for its own defence, to keep developing the best weapons. You need to be able to sell them in order to make the research and development worthwhile, don't you? So how would this work if other countries can't trust America and stop buying from them? And in actual fact, you could also think if Europe's going to build up its own capacity, some of those other countries may buy the European versions instead as being more trustworthy, right? So the conclusion they draw is that the US defence sector could collapse or at least significantly diminish. And this may indeed happen. But I have a more disturbing thought. Europe's not actually a massive spender on defence, really. It's partly why we're in the mess we're in now. The big spending countries are those who buy the weapons to use. Obviously, it costs you more to use weapons than just to stockpile them for events you hope never occur. So the big spending countries are actually those like China, Russia, Saudi Arabia, right? So over the next few years, Europe is going to ramp up investment in defence. That does not mean just throwing money at the American defence industry. There might be some spending there in the short term, but the massive budgets being announced this week are not for buying weapons, but building factories. So to avoid a collapse of the US defence industry, because what Trump's doing at the moment is building up a new competitor on the world scene, right? What they will want to do is they'll either want to sell more to existing customers or get new customers. That's what you do, isn't it? So I can't imagine there will be any attempt to restrain Israel. And then what about this? So what if Trump starts talking about the way Europe is building up its own defence sector to challenge America and says that to sustain their own industry, they should sell to Russia? Not seeing anyone really contemplating that, but would you bet against it? And why wouldn't Trump try to do this? Russia is a huge spender on military equipment. Of course it is. It's always invading at least one country at any one time. Trump will claim that he not only needs to find new markets because of the ones he's pissed away with his cack-handed diplomacy, but he will say he wants Russia to favour America over China. Go on, tell me I'm wrong. With reasons. Why? And if this does happen, America will be supplying a country who regard NATO as an enemy. And if this is the path we're on, we need to start thinking seriously about the world order over the next generation. We can't just turn to China. They're more stable. But they also have plans to invade innocent people, right? They also don't even pretend to share our values. We need Europe to step up. The EU could become way more important in the next decade. It's already the most successful peace project that we've had in Europe. It has prevented war between the major powers of Europe for the first time in literally thousands of years. I know a lot of people who are not into their history may not appreciate this, but before the establishment of the precursor to the EU, you couldn't go more than a decade or two without a big war between two of the major powers of Europe for like 2,000 years. So the EU has been a massively successful peace project. May have to step up further and now see itself as more of a global peacemaker before long. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe for further content. If you'd like to support the channel further, you click the join button for memberships. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'll see you later.